Henderson. I'm CEO of Laramide Resources. We're a TSX and ASX listed public uranium company with late-stage development projects in the United States and Australia. We're happy to be here today with Matt. We've talked many times before. We're coming up on an exciting milestone in Australia where we're going to have an election that hopefully will allow our project to charge ahead there. And we have something new and quite interesting to introduce to the market today here in London. We're at the World Nuclear Association conference, which is sort of the granddaddy of the conferences in the nuclear business.
We've got a scoop, folks. That's what we've got. I'm a bit excited about this because I think this is possibly the best story that's come out of the conference for me. Tell us what you've done.
Okay, well, that's interesting. Yeah, when we think we've done something that will seem quite obvious to a lot of people in the business, but for some reason or another hasn't really been done yet, and that's that we're going to go and do greenfield exploration in Kazakhstan, which is obviously, if you're going to look for uranium, you want to go where the uranium is, as Willie Sutton used to say about bank robbery, that, go where the money is. And in terms of particularly ISR, that's the biggest, best place to look in the whole planet and the biggest producer. And obviously everything that they do as an operating company and as a country is closely scrutinized. Particularly here, it's obviously the source of lots of the conversations, given there's issues around their production forecast and everything else. But they've really opened up the country now to exploration. They're really seeking a lot of Western inbound interest, and obviously they've got a reserve replacement issue that they're going to have to deal with, given that they have a huge legacy endowment, but it's not infinite. And so we're excited because we think we've got some of the best ground, probably, the best uranium real estate now on the planet to explore in. And it's also really relatively low-cost exploration, given the nature of what you're looking at. So.
It's so obvious. I can't believe it. And no one's done it before. It's incredible. So it's just, we're staring at this thing. Obviously, 40% of the world's production comes from that country, and you've done it. How did you pick up the asset?
Well, we were just sort of introduced. I'm sort of a person that makes decisions pretty quickly, and it sort of was an obvious thing to do. But we were sort of introduced to the idea, and then when we heard the idea, people who were in country, and some Western interest people that had been working there on some of the other commodities that other Western companies have been in there looking for, including majors now have gone into Kazakhstan in a meaningful way, and it's just. You would sort of have thought that, well, no, you can't possibly get all the good ground right near where all the roll fronts are and all the mines are. Surely that must be tied up, or there must be preferential access or something like that. So it sort of has to be introduced to you that it's even possible before you would say, yeah, let's go give it a try. And also just in terms of the scale of the opportunity that you have in terms of putting a real estate package together, because to find an ISR project of consequence, you need a decent amount of what's called roll front or whatever, in order to chase up the structures long distances of tens of kilometers, and those kind of land packages, particularly in the United States, because we have one of those type assets in the United States. In our land packages, it's a nice land package, but it's nothing like the land package we've put together there.
Well, let's talk. Okay, location excellent. Size of the land package, or how
about 6,000 square kilometers?
Okay, yeah. So you got lots to play with there, right? And what's that cost you?
Well, we're going to have to spend. It's basically you get granted an exploration lease, and we've done this deal. We have basically it's operating through a company, and then we have the right to buy out the company, but that company has over 20 licenses. And they all require work requirements per year, but it's a standard thing where if you're not having success, you drop the licenses that aren't working and you keep the ones that are. And then you have another re-up where you have to mandatorily drop land, but that's 6 years out.
Right.
And the earning commitments are really quite modest. The compensation in terms of the deal itself is really success-based, and we have the right to really acquire this company for the next 3 or 4 years at a number that's half cash and half shares. And obviously if it ends up being shares and there's been what would be a modest discovery there, they don't put anything into production that isn't 40 million pounds. I mean, they talk in terms of tons, all their various mines. And Kazakhstan has 17 or 18 mines. They're all in these operating JVs.
Yeah.
Mostly with a lot of them with Western interests, Chinese interests, Russian interests. Actually, mostly the people that need the uranium. It's illogical. I mean, they operate as a big, logical, global business.
Sensible business plan, indeed. In fact, just talking to, I want to kind of go through the kind of reasons to believe that this is going to be good news. Okay, so Kazakhstan, great. Location of the asset, size of the asset, the ability to do business in country as a Western entity. Tell me about who's in country and what, how you think that you can navigate all of that.
Oh, well, I mean, I think in terms of, if you look beyond the uranium business, talk about the global exploration resource business, obviously major oil majors are there. Since they opened up the country, a lot of people, because copper is obviously the hot mineral with battery metals and everything else, there's a lot of work going on with very big majors, the Rio Tintos, BHPs, Teck, Fortescue, people like that, looking for copper. And I think, to the best of my knowledge, there might be the odd Aussie junior there.
There is. Eastern Resources.
Yeah, looking for uranium, but they're not on. They're actually the one that I saw was more of a hard rock project, which is surprising given all of the production in the country is ISR. But in terms of business, obviously Cameco has the longest standing relationship there with Inkai. They've obviously done fabulously well with that. They're still involved. A number of these projects are basically adjacent, effectively, to Inkai. Or close to it, and then you have the utility relationships, and the utilities basically are in there when they become operating companies, and they're in there and they take their product in effectively in kind, because the Japan Inc. needs however many pounds they need every year to run the reactors, and Korea similarly, and CNCC and what have you. And I think the feeling longer term is that. And part of the reason that the West, is trying to ramp up its own supply chain is there's a concern that a lot of the material over time might stay in the East, but it's just logical to stay in the East. I mean, you have two gigantic customers, Russia and China, they're right next door. I mean, it would be natural that they would be if they're the biggest, best customers. Why do you really need to ship it halfway around the world? I mean, not particularly.
Okay, so those big names that you've dropped in their ability to do business there, their willingness to put money into countries says to me they're not concerned about their pounds on the ground or whatever commodities they're hunting, oil and gas included. They're not worried about that being taken by the government or taken by Russian influence, et cetera, et cetera. There's always in this game is a lot of geopolitical posturing and adversarial type commentary. So you feel comfortable because knowing that you can do business there and come up with an end product, whether that be cash, value, exit, whatever.
Oh, 100%. I would say too, though, man, it's a bit early. Like, let us explore. Let us hopefully find something of consequence.
Sure.
Those issues that people that the street would worry about, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Later on, when you do this, because we'll have to introduce Kazakhstan into the process, and they sort of have a decision to make as to what level they want to come in at. And all these JVs aren't the same. There isn't any one template on any of these particular things. And in some cases, they allow other people to operate the entire thing. But that's sort of down the track, if you will.
Oh, no, it's down the track, but you don't enter in a process where I'm going to spend millions of dollars working up something which then is taken off of you. And that's happened in Niger. Very topical at the moment, and ask Goviax about that, and all sorts of other jurisdictional risks, that we see around the world. So, my point is, with that in the back of your mind, you think this is the right thing to do, right? Yeah,
I think. Well, first of all, I think Kazakhstan is a systemically important company in the uranium world, and I think nuclear is one of the few things that in the world where people really still cooperate. And if you see the things that happen around Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant and those kind of things, everybody in the nuclear business, their one biggest fear is that there's some kind of stuff up around safety or something else that basically sets the cause of nuclear back for everybody. And so I think there's also a whole level of order the way those kind of companies operate versus you had a one-off thing that maybe somebody private interests or something were involved in. This is also a state-owned company that privatized in 25% of it, I believe, trades here in London. And I think the rules are going to be pretty clear-cut. The thing people worry about, which all of the governments that we're more familiar with in the West, they have the same levers too, called, it's a windfall profits tax or a super tax. And so the risk of outright expropriation, I think, in any part of the resource business now is probably really quite a small tail risk kind of event. Your bigger risk is that governments come and go, and they're not all as friendly as to businesses as. There's no consistent level of.
Are you talking about the UK right now?
Well, are there super taxes here yet? I mean,
They're coming. Don't worry.
they've done it in Australia. So, I
Yeah.
mean, we have a project in Australia. I mean, in the state of Queensland where, geez, the coal miners were making a bit too much money. That's a pretty nice honeypot. And there was a big hue and cry about it all. But, I mean, at the end of the day, the government got away with it. People paid the taxes. The government took credit for running, budget surpluses. And so that's a whole different conversation. But
I
would call that expropriation.
Tongue in cheek.
as well.
My point is, it happens everywhere around the world. Now, I've worked in the oil and gas sector in Kazakhstan. I understand, how to do business there. Who in your team has got the experience or the country experience? Because it's not just a case of, it's okay to do business there. If you don't know what you're doing, it's a little bit harder. So who are you sort of directing towards this? Who's going to be managing things on the ground?
Well, we've really beefed up our exploration team in Australia the last couple of years. So our VPX, Rhys Davies, who actually lives here based in the UK, but he obviously back and forth to Australia. We beefed up the actual team on the ground there. So this is a great thing for them to get stuck into as well, because there's a seasonality element to what we do in Australia. So it makes it quite efficient. But I was given particular encouragement because we added a director at the last annual meeting. John Mays, whose father, Wallace Mays, is sort of a bit of a legend in the uranium mining business. He sort of claims to have invented heap leaching effectively in uranium, but that damn, he's very well known, ISR, et cetera, as well. And John's a chemical engineer. He's a ISR expert, and he actually worked for Eurasia back in the when they were there running those ISR mines, I think in the late 2000s or 2007, 8, 9 period of time.
Yep.
And he was very excited about this, and he had no qualms whatsoever about operating there. So it was a great environment to operate in, a lot of capable people and stuff like. So we're really excited to get over there and get stuck in on the whole thing.
Fantastic. Yeah. Look, time waits for no man, and the markets at the moment are doing their thing. A reaction to China, Goldman's view of China's targets maybe being missed. US numbers not quite at what everyone hoped. And I think that it's a difficult time for equities. Massive disconnect between the uranium thematic here and the realities on the ground. An announcement like this may not see the pop that you expect. I think they should, but it may not. You've got to look beyond that. This is a bigger opportunity. I think you've got here. How do you fund this to move forward? Do you need new money? Do you need more money, or you got enough?
Well, we're not cash flowing, so you always need more money. It's always just about
enough to
timing and quantum and.
What's my point?
And
can you tickle this thing forward until the market does maybe recover?
Well, I mean, the good thing about this particular deal, first of all, it's an exploration deal, and we effectively leg our way into moving it forward. Mm-hmm. And the nature of the work you typically have to do in this kind of thing is lower at the front end until you get into drilling. But drilling is frankly the best way to identify these roll fronts and then narrow down where you think the roll is, if you will, or where the sweet spot is. So we'll be at least a year probably getting into any kind of meaningful expenditure. The other thing we've done with this arrangement is there was a contemplation originally when we thought about it, because we thought about some of the concerns that you were raising, and let's see what the market thinks about it and whether they think, should Laramide really be doing that? You've got your hands full in Australia. We're supposed to hopefully go into a big permitting effort there very soon. You got things going on in the United States. So the deal was structured to allow for it to be set off in a spin-off company and funded separately, because I think certainly this is a company that the market, there is no company like this in the uranium universe. And I think it's a company that the market would happily fund on its own. So there is an option to do that as well.
Right.
And we'll sort of get the feedback and decide which way to go. But I mean, as a company, we've always been about trying to build a company that, we really are trying to build a company for the industry, for the utilities of scale that has multiple assets.
Right.
I mean, most companies need, current production, the next development project, and typically they have some kind of portfolio of exploration things they're always looking at. And if you look at the uranium universe, there really aren't many companies like that. I mean, this takeover bid, which is obviously very topical and it's all very current and coming to some kind of conclusion too with Paladin and Fission. I mean, they're sort of putting together a more traditional company that has a bigger level of production because at the moment, it's Kazatomprom. Cameco is really the institutional company of choice, if you will. It's got scale and big production and everything else, and it's a big drop off from. I don't know what their production number is, 20 million pounds or something, to whatever the next current one is with real production, let's say in 25. Is that 1 million pounds? It's probably Paladin at 3 or 4 million pounds. So you can see there's a big void in the marketplace. And I think that's the next leg of this uranium market is if there's M&A and there's things coming together, I think you're going to see those conversations about how do we create 4 or 5 of these companies that are actually more like that than they are about, well, we have a development thing. I think we've talked many times, and I sort of have been of the view that all of the development things that we know about, they'll all have to get built at some price, even if they're sort of on the wrong part of the cost curve, if you will.
Today.
Because we just need the physical, we're going to need the physical material. And then I also think we're really going to have to get into a wave of exploration. I thought that too. Like, okay, where's the next big wave of exploration? Because we need to do more of it, and it's not being really that successful. And the things we have found tend to be maybe they're all in one place or they're big and lumpy. And so there isn't a lot in the pipeline.
No,
we're beyond the current known development projects.
Yeah, it's like horrifically short. I think we're talking about 150 million pounds today and declining quickly over the next 5 years. And then we need, that would potentially need us to treble our output. It's a big ask. I'm just because I know you've got to dash and run around the conference and talk to people because they'll be super excited about this announcement of yours. The ability to do business in country that we've talked about, but it's also the fact that they know uranium, they know ISR. ISR should be or could be in the right place, without let's say NGO or for let's say social license, the social aspect of it, perhaps being too sensitive. I'm not saying you're going to anything shortcut anything, but some places of the world it's hard to do uranium mining, and some it's going to be a bit easier. I suspect Kazatomprom, given where your asset is, might be a bit easier. You're expecting them to understand the process.
Oh no, I mean you make an excellent point. I think if you're going to be in this business and you start looking down the list of countries that you think, well, this looks prospective geologically or whatever else, well, that's just item 1 on the list. And then you have to really, which I don't know, but most people do this, I think, subconsciously or whatever, but it's a big deal, particularly in uranium, because you have to go, if you want to go find uranium, you're probably better to find it in a place that's comfortable with uranium, just comfortable with exporting it. Right. That's a whole nother level of barrier, if you will, that doesn't exist if you go looking for a gold mine.
Yeah.
And things like that. And then you have the whole supply chain and all the people that are sophisticated around that. I mean, there's radiation safety protocols even on exploration projects. And so, yes, there is that whole other level of things. It's very much better to go to a country that is comfortable with uranium exploration, preferably uranium production, because that's the goal, is to find something that you could produce. There's a lot of things that are hung up because, well, we're just waiting for the country to figure out whether they want to make uranium and export it. And so I mean, from a standpoint of would you go to the obvious place? This is sort of an obvious place.
Yeah,
if they'll let you,
ineloquently dancing towards that point, because here's the real crunch here for miners going forward. Not only do we need it all, but we need to work out how quickly we can get at it. And I think some of that first mover advantage stuff could play into the hands of those who can versus those who are maybe hindered by a much longer process. And time's money in this business as well. I think that's the other factor here. So if Kazakhstan is open to it, clearly is, understands it, clearly is, the time frame and the cost therefore to you of maybe, it's early days, getting to production, I can get line of sight to that. That's also quite exciting as an investor. It's a reality.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I think if you were to find something, and let's say, I mean, just use their, they did this tax that everyone's scratching their heads going, you know, why do they do this tax and everything else? But if you look at the tax, I can't remember what they called it, mineral extraction tax or something like that. The very biggest producers had the highest rate, but they had a whole tiering of systems and it's all in tons, so they don't use pounds and everything. But I think the lowest tier of tons where they're expecting that you would even ask to build a mine is like 2 million pounds. It's 2 to 4. You pay the lowest level of tax. So to me, if you look at it the other way, as opposed to this is terrible, they're trying to take all the money there. And if you look at it from the standpoint of, well, maybe they're trying to incentivize finding some more things and getting some more things up and running long term. I look at it the other way around and say, maybe that's actually what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite encouraging, but it also shows you the scale. Like you're not going there to find 10 million pounds, a 10 million pound ISR thing. You're going there to find, I don't know, 50 million pounds, 40 million pounds. You know, they might take your call if you have that.
I think everyone will.
Yeah.
I think everyone will. Look, we better get out there and tell this story. Congratulations.
Okay. Thanks very much,
I love it.
Pleasure. It was a pleasure. We'll be back.